Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Day 9 Daily number 357. Oh, God, I skipped the date. It's Thursday. It's October 6, 2011. It's time for the Day 9 Daily where we learn to be a better gamer. For you archive viewers, we are on attempt number 2 of the intro. Because for some reason I thought my stream went down. Ooh, tearing, weeping. And of course, we actually have a very small, intimate live audience today, simply due to the fact that IPL 3 is going on right now, and if you haven't checked it out, check it out, because it is looking slick. Oh my god, it's looking good. And I'd be delighted to continue watching it after the daily. Today's topic is going to be EG's IdrA versus EG's Puma, which was a really exciting series for pretty much everyone because Puma is basically really, really good just consistently. Won NASL, doing well in pretty much all the leagues he enters. He is long renowned as being one of the strongest practice partners in Korea, and IdrA has kind of a bad tendency and a consistent tendency to just choke out and scrub out of tournaments when he's in really good positions. So I think a lot of people were so excited to see IdrA just playing really, really, really well in this series, and in this game especially. And the one thing, though, that kind of made me want to do this game was not necessarily that it was so epic. Right? A lot of people want casts of epic games, but this is a strategy and analysis show. Why choose this game? There's 3 big reasons why I chose this game. First reason, when you are playing a solid straight-up game, and your opponent is playing a solid straight-up game, there's generally a point that you hit where one of you kind of collapses. If you're playing at the lower levels on your ladder, I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this in your ladder runs, that like you have a build order that you do, like an early expand, and your first few games, as you're going up, all of a sudden your opponent tries to cheese you and he collapses, and you kind of progress on and win the game. Or, after a while, let's say you're both doing early expand builds, one of you does a first push and collapses, and you end up staying ahead. In this game, they both don't really collapse for an extremely long time. So it's kind of standard play, going well for both players for a long time. So I wanted to look at just that situation because it really doesn't come up very often for a lot of people. A lot of times what looks standard, a lot of times what actually is standard, you'll hardly ever see because games don't really go on that long. The second big thing is that there were some kind of crazy exchanges that went on in the middle. And afterwards, both players were suddenly plunged down back into the low food zone. The way that usual games go is you get to the top of your food and you kind of hang and maybe go down and hang back up and then you go down and then total collapse. What doesn't usually happen is this, where you both fall down in an equal fashion. So the question is, you probably know what to do when you're at 90 food the first time you hit 90 food, but what do you do if you're 35 minutes into the game and you're back to 90 food again? Kind of regathering your footing and stepping back into the gameplay properly. Because a real huge issue that can happen is where you go up to your late game army, you get battered down to 90 food, and then you just try to rebuild that late game army. Sometimes it's good to go back to a more mid-game composition. And the last and most important reason why I want to do this game is because it shouldn't have been this long and epic. It really should not have been. I think that there were some egregious errors that happened in the mid-game that allowed it to go on to the 44 minutes and 43 seconds. Oh, if only one more second, that would have been sweet. But still, it shouldn't have been that long. And it's so easy after you did the wrong decision and then played absolutely brilliantly to then say, ha, that was a really good game. When in fact you should have said something like, this was unideal and should not have been that close. We're going to see this happen quite a few times in that late and mid game. So as you can hear that the sound is enabled, we have IdrA spawning in the top right and Puma spawning in the bottom right. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to step through their openings individually so that way we have a good sense of just what the heck is going on. IdrA is just going to do an early expand. Let's go ahead and get to, I don't know, maybe the 8-minute mark I think is reasonable. He's getting his gas a little while after he's getting his spawning pool. Part of me wants to question why not get gas and then pool if he's wanting that early Zergling speed. A lot of players I will criticize in that regard, but IdrA's one of those players who just has his early game timings so deliberately done, so deliberately panned out and planned out that I don't really object to it too much. We're going to see him get an early third queen, begin to spread creep, do one of these, put guys in gas, pull guys out of gas, and then go for a layer. The timing of these geysers is pretty key. Note that he's taking these 2 geysers before he gets his layer. This is going to help him get a good amount of Mutalisks up. He has the 1 spine crawler at the front, the evolution chamber trying to constrict motion of any sort of units to swing on in. Just barely enough Zerglings. We actually have 6 Zerglings on the field right now. And other than that, drone, drone, drone away. And hey, a 4th geyser while our hatch is half done. Having our 4 geysers finished before the layer is done is essentially a Mutalisk build. When the layer is halfway done, we go ahead and grab the Baneling Nest. Or when it's getting close to done. It looks like it's a little bit later than a lot of Zergs go for. Evolution Chamber serves a number of purposes, helping to constrict motion in here. We can't have Hellions move like this. We just put the Zerglings here, the Evo Chamber here, and the Spine Crawler there, and we're great. And notice that the Spine Crawler hugs this bottom lip hard. You can actually fit a queen right there. And other than this, I think the only last noteworthy thing to mention is the fact that this extractor was the last one built because that's the most vulnerable extractor. And those 6 Zerglings that we built that are potentially going to be used as defensive Banelings, a la this Baneling Nest, are out here destroying the destructible rocks. Perfect. Really, really, really easy standard perfect. Sublime. Now let's come over to EG's Puma, because we're going to see something absolutely bonkers. Frickin' bonkerville, man. But still actually has a clear through line to it, which is delightful. And by the way, for any of you who don't know, I'm actually reading the chat constantly while I'm talking. And Xanarex just noted that in Breaking Bad Season 4, Episode 3, Uniden makes an appearance. That's what I'm talking about. Generally, I look at the chat to see what people are saying so I can sort of readjust the content on the fly, but when there's something that incredible on the chat, I have to point it out. Thank you so much. Yes. That is so sweet. Wow. So anyways, Puma is going to do something that is pretty typical, pretty reasonable. There it goes down the command center. Boom. And he then gets this refinery up. Okay, so this, I think, makes total sense. I'm going to early expand. I'm going to wall myself in with the command center, thereby allowing me to be able to stay defended against early Ling attacks while I wait for my barracks to finish. But hey, you know what? As a little bit of a metagame addition, I anticipate my opponent will early expand, so I will gas first. And then I will build my barracks. Anytime you build gas before barracks, you will have 100 gas for a factory right when the barracks is done. So, any player generally wants to be putting pressure on their opponent at all points in time. There are some people who don't do this. Players like Bomber are generally not putting on too much pressure onto their opponents while they are playing. They generally go for just very good attack and upgrade timings and for an early third command center and that sort of thing. But notice that Puma is getting this factory really, really fast after he gets his barracks up. He's getting his second orbital command actually quite a bit delayed. This orbital command will be ahead by about 10 energy. And what he's going to be doing is going straight for a Banshee. So this is a very ever so slightly delayed Banshee play that will still be able to do some damage and some pressure. Some immediate effects of this. Early Roach pressure, slightly uncommon, very strong, completely negated by this early starport. If we spot a Zerg trying to gather up some Banelings outside the front, we can use this Banshee to help pick some of that off. Where did that Banshee go? There it is. He started cloaking first. Yeah. The Banshee, I especially when it's in conjunction with an early expansion, you do kind of need to think of it as a defensive unit. Almost all plays that are out there that people don't do, but occasionally try and fail, they kind of have this common property of, yeah, I can do stuff to you, but it doesn't actually help me defend against blah. I think one of the more noteworthy ones is the siege tank drop. that was pretty popular in the early days of Lost Temple, it kind of had this unfortunate consequence of really not making you very safe to take and expand, because sure, you could do the tank drop and kill off his expansion, but now because you went tank drop so fast, you don't really have any Marines. Maybe you can get the Thors up, but how are you really going to aptly defend your front if he starts to do a lot of just basic ground pressure? It's a little bit tough. And that is kind of the struggle there. So with this Banshee, I would always want to ask myself, does this give us some easy solutions to some aggression problems? It does, and that makes me a little more comfortable rushing for it so quickly. So Puma is going to take his early expand, and I think the real shocker for a lot of players, especially the Zerg players, is to note that despite this well-timed, ridiculously fast Banshee build, remember where we were when we stopped at 8 minutes for IdrA. We stopped when his Spire was actually, it's going to start right now, his Spire had just started. He was getting ready to get his expansion up. There's really hardly anything out for Puma. He has 1 bunker, 2 Hellions to help give him a little bit of map control, as we can see here and here. This will help him reposition his Banshee if he so needs to. And the Banshee that's now making its way across the map. So now let's go ahead and slow it down, open up that Production tab. And Puma, I will occasionally come back to, but there's going to be some interesting swapping that he does with all these structures. In essence, he's going to give the factory to this tech lab, and these 2 barracks are going to get reactors, and this starport is going to go no add-on medevacs. Because, hell, look, really fast 3rd command center. Puma is going for 3 bases very fast. That's kind of the whole idea. And this Banshee is going to allow him to do a lot of that. We're going to finish up the early game discussion in a little bit. IdrA is going to have a lot of flexibility here, thanks to the fact that he has these 3 queens up. He does lose 5 workers, but that's not so bad. IdrA has good timing on his 3rd, and we're going to see him also plop down a macro hatchery. And one thing also to note, economically, notice that IdrA is at 658 gas, basically 700. And remember how I said he got these 3 geysers before he even started the layer. And this 4th extractor was built shortly after the layer. It's actually quite common to see Zergs a little bit uncomfortable getting that much gas up early because they'll have like 400 floating and it feels gross. But for the Mutalisks, if we come back and look, we're actually only going to be able to make about 9 Mutalisks with the amount of gas we have. And that's kind of what we want to do. It allows us to begin bringing the noise a little bit back onto our opponent. We are going to see Puma get his 2 reactors up. Plenty of time to get these reactors up because he does have this map control granted by these Hellions. He is pulling them back now, but we have the Banshee out here. We have a 2nd Banshee. There it is, helping to destroy them destructible rocks. But now IdrA is just going to burn right through his gas. He's getting that +1 carapace. It's kind of funny how these structures alone consume a ton of gas. Again, one of the big reasons why we're getting these gas geysers so early. For whatever build you do, and if you are going for this standard mutilingness, keep in mind that getting these geysers early is pretty reasonable. And I think that this creep tumor is one of the smartest things in the game. Really nice. I would even love to see a creep tumor spread up here and more creeps spread down there. Dark Force is really responsible about that. And not too many other Zergs are. Again, same pattern from Puma. Not taking that as his 3rd geyser. Make this the last damn geyser you take. Please, please do not take this early. You will regret it deeply. In the unit station, notice how low IdrA is on Zerglings. This lowness on Zerglings is proportional to what he's been seeing. If he saw more units coming, he would immediately morph all of them into Banelings and then flood more Zerglings. That's the sort of expected response. This is the style of Zerg that Dongray Gu has kind of nailed very well. Just the virtually no Zerglings and a Baneling nest in case. Really fast tech to Mutalisk. Pretty typical good stuff. We like it. It does wonders for us. Does he even know that there's another hatch or another command center going down? He actually does not. This is a preemptive decision by IdrA. He's just going, yeah, I'm going to be in really good shape. And because IdrA is a genius at managing those little adjustments in his economy, he's in good condition to do so. Now, there's this idea of consistency that I talk about a lot, which is that if you're going for a big long-term macro gameplay, make certain that all of your decisions sort of align with that. Like, getting this early hatchery right here kind of aligns with preparing to do a huge macro play. Taking this expansion here kind of lines up with doing a huge macro play. And a lot of times I will see a player get these 2 evolution chambers up, sometimes I'll see players not get these 2 evolution chambers up. You kind of really should do that if you're going for way down the line late game and everything you're doing is helping make that moment good. Make sure you have the upgrades, the expansions, and all the infrastructure. Oftentimes, I'll see players do this as well. They'll be relatively low on bases, and they'll get 2 evolution chambers to begin getting upgrades. You're not going for a long-term play. You can maybe get 0 or 1 evolution chamber, but 2 makes no sense because your whole build is focused on being strong right now and doing damage right now, and you're wasting money for your army later when that army's going to be terrible. So, of course, I want to come back here and just briefly note that Puma is also going to be kind of gearing up to do the same with this 3rd orbital command. And a really good technique I encourage a lot of you Terrans to go for is to have, if you are going for a long-term play, to begin building barracks instead of going barracks, reactor, barracks, reactor. Have 4 or 5 barracks with no add-on, and then as things start to kick in the gear, just reactor, 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 reactor. Because that will allow you to play with kind of the reinforcement. It's for those mid-game pushes, and then suddenly slam down all the reactors for the late game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a brief break, because what we have seen thus far is good, solid setups for the mid-game, which is very expected. In part 2, what we're going to look at is the cool stuff that happens in the mid-game. Geez, that's a bad word to forget. We're going to look at what happens in the mid-game, and in particular, we're going to look at some great plays from both players and some big mistakes that cause the game to go on longer. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere. Part 2 of Day 9 Daily coming up right after this.